let's just start with how you got to Xavier. I mean, you're almost 8 hours away.
Yeah. So I was looking at schools all over, emailing coaches all over. I had times that I could either be recruited or walk on most places. Um, and a friend at my high school was going to Xavier. And so I decided to check it out. I heard they had a good like business school, a good um, sports teams and things like that. And so I emailed the coach and like I immediately got a response with like an exception letter, some money, and like a brief overview about the type of girls that would be coming on to the cross country team that following year. I was invited out for a recruiting visit, and I think something about it, like my parents for some reason weren't able to come that weekend, so they just like put me on a plane and I was picked up from the airport by one of the coaches, and I was there by myself, and I think it was the only recruiting visit that I was really able to envision myself being there. And I did like the group of girls that like the times that they were coming in, like it was we were all around like the same kind of time as for like the mile and 2 mile, and like the 5K. And so I just thought like, okay, this is where I can really excel in cross country and track, but also like possibly at school. And like back then I was very much like had a pretty much jock mentality. Like I struggled in school, but I knew that I wanted to do something in the realm of business, probably marketing. And I think even just knowing that helped me pick a school that was like better for me all around rather than just the sport, because there were a lot of schools that I was looking at that were just going to be for the coach and the team. And I learned that was probably, and no one even like told me that. It was just like this gut feeling I had that like just don't choose the school based on the coach or the team. Um, so that was one of the more mature decisions I made at 17 years old.
Were you always going to go D1?
No, I would not say that. I had a breakout season, my spring track season of junior year. I never knew I wanted to run in college. I never knew I wanted to do sports in college. I joined the track team my freshman year of high school. And I like begged my coach not to put me down to JV that year. I was like, let me like work hard. I promise I'll work hard and show you that like I belong on varsity. So like freshman and sophomore year, I really worked my way up. And then sophomore year, I had a really bad loss at the like district championship that would qualify me for the state championship. And that just kind of like sparked this like frenzy in me that like I just had to do whatever it took to get to the next level, that like I would be out in front and like I would never lose at the end again. Like I would just be too far ahead for anyone to beat me at the end. So yeah, I went to that was not that summer. Well, I started going to a bunch of running camps, one of which was in Colorado, which was amazing. And then like that following summer, going into senior year, I trained out there all summer. So I just started to take it more seriously. But track was always my favorite versus cross country. And that's what really helped me get to the next level for Division 1.
Where else were you looking at going?
I was looking at going to, so dream school was Syracuse, which I would have been a walk on. I was looking at St. Joe's, Temple University, West Virginia, Ole Miss. I narrowed it down to West Virginia and Xavier by the end. And I think it was like the West Virginia coach and their program is awesome. But I really couldn't imagine myself being in West Virginia. I think at the time I wanted to be like kind of suburbs, but kind of city. And then it was going to be a difficult program for me, like West Virginia. Like, it was a lot of competitive girls, a lot of the top girls in the nation. Um, and I think so senior year, I actually, by the end of spring track, I ended up having 3 stress fractures in my hip, femur, and groin, all in one leg, that almost broke my femur to the point where I was never going to be able to run again. Um, I was going through back then really bad mental health issues. I think it was the pressure of the recruiting process. You know, senior year, you want to like prove yourself and go out with a bang. And I think there was a part of me that knew my body wasn't holding up the way that it did that junior year. I don't know if it was puberty, but I mean, I know most of it was stress and like just a lot of self-hatred for myself, obviously. So um yeah, the West Virginia team was very welcoming. The coaches were very welcoming. Like, I did trust that if I went with their team, that they would have nurtured me into a great runner. Um, there's something about Xavier was like, there's more here for you. So that's what I chose. It wasn't an easy decision at all.
That's so fun because I interview so many different people on this podcast, some of them from out of this country. And very
Mhm.
frequently do I get an athlete who potentially could have come to the Mountaineers. So this is fun.
Yeah, it was definitely, like, looking back, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what like I don't know what like thought process I would go through now if I was being recruited for colleges. Obviously, it's very different with the NIL and things like that. I would hope that I would be a little bit smarter in my decisions. I think there was a lot of me back then that just was like caught up in like the glory of what you could be as an athlete, and I think I'd go with, not that Xavier didn't care about me, because they did, but I would go where I felt most valued, and made sure that was more of a priority rather than like this, let me prove myself. Because I think that kind of mentality, um, I still suffer with in many areas of my life.
Do you think that that is an inherent part of the recruiting process where you are essentially having to pitch your skills to random strangers who could dictate the rest of your life?
Yeah, and I don't think it's like, it teaches you a lot. Like, I learned at a very young age, like, okay, so to put in perspective, they're like in Pennsylvania, you go on like PA Mile Split, like there was like the Gold Elite, which is like a lot of like your Foot Locker finalists or like the Nike national finalists and all that. And then there's like the Silver Elite. I was in the Silver Elite group. So like I still had, according to coaches, like a lot of potential to blossom in college. And I truly believed I had a lot more potential to blossom in college. So I was very much in that cusp of, I could pretty much email any school I want. The thing was I didn't have the grades at the time. And that really backfired. But if I had the grades, if I cold emailed any coach, like I would have been invited out for a visit, and many schools I was. Um, and and so I learned at a young age, like pitching yourself, sales, like cold email calling. Like, I do that a lot now, and it's gotten me very far. So there's a good side of it, right? But I think it creates like this dynamic between coach and athlete. Like, obviously you want to respect your coach, but it is a partnership. It is, when an athlete is doing well, that serves and benefit of the coach and vice versa. And so you really want someone that you can trust, that is not going to like do any reverse psychology or dangle your spot on the team against you and things like that. Like, that is, I don't think that's healthy for any athlete. I know it happens in a lot more of like the revenue making sports, and like I said, there's a good side of it. It teaches you this type of like motivation to go after what you want and like learn those things, to put yourself out there and like take pride in like the skills you have. Um, but there is a dark side to it, and I think there's a lot of like departments and coaches that forget that these are kids coming out of their childhood homes and into this world of a business, because it is a business. And then when other outside coming of age or like trauma happens, how do we give the tools to that athlete to be able to continue at a high performing level? Because I truly believe that, like, coming out at 18, our minds, not even though they're not developed, like, we are thinking in a way that most 18-year-olds are not thinking. We're thinking about high performance. We're thinking about money. Um, we're thinking about the next phase of, possibly being a star. And so it's a lot. It's a lot. And then on top of it, like, going to college level classes, meeting a bunch of new people, the ridiculous romantic relationships that exist on college campuses that are never actually healthy. So yeah, no, there's a lot that's going on in those 18-year-old brains.
And you went into a culture that had resources to handle those things. They had psychologists, they had athletic trainers and nutritionists. I've
Yes.
talked to D2 and D3 athletes who didn't have any of those resources and had to do it all themselves and work through it all themselves with third-party individuals, if anyone. How did having so many people being paid to help you succeed change the trajectory of how you viewed that college experience?
Yeah, so actually, we're really, I say all the time, throwing money at something does not solve the problem. So throwing money into having a sports psychologist or having a nutritionist does not mean there's quality people a part of that. So I actually was sent to a nutritionist at the end of my freshman year of college. After I chose Xavier, I had another stress fracture at the end of cross country, so I was out for winter and spring track.
So that's 4 stress fractures now.
Yes. When you put it like that, yes. And I was sent to a nutritionist doing the whole like lab scans of like bone density, because it was so many stress fractures in the course of like, less than a year, I guess. And I really pinpoint seeing the nutritionist in the spring of my freshman year of track as like the start of my eating disorder and like body image issues. There was just, coming, like, going through the injury and taking that kind of time off, being a freshman, go, wait, I'm trying to think, hold on. Going on birth control. I was going through puberty. So like, of course I was gaining weight. Yes, drinking causes weight gain, but I was also like in a sheltered home all of high school. I wanted to make friends. I was curious. I was a kid, and it was also part of the team culture. Like, we did have parties and things like that. So there was a lot of different components, but then to go to a nutritionist that then is like telling you need to be 10% body fat to then like probably be one of the top people on the team, and telling you only need to eat 1,400 calories when you're running 50 miles a week. That summer was really, it just started snowballing. Like, there was a lot of unresolved trauma I think I had from the injury in high school, because there was a lot of strings attached to that injury. I had a really poor relationship with my high school coaches that were a part of like the school district. There was a lot of unhealthy power dynamics, a lot of manipulation. I didn't originally start out as a cross country runner. I started out as a track runner, and I played field hockey and did swimming. And I liked those sports. And I wanted to play those sports. And there was just, it was a lot. And I don't think I processed that kind of behavior until honestly recently. But it affected me in college, right? It created this conditional environment. Not, and of course, like college athletics, it always has kind of that conditional environment, and sometimes it is okay because it's, you know, Division One, it's a commitment. You make that commitment because you love the sport. Um, and I do think like in college, my coach made those boundaries okay. Like they weren't anything like they were in high school. So like he let me take the time off when I had the stress fractures. He sent me to the nutritionist thinking it would help me, right? And then sophomore year comes around, I already have, you know, this body issue, like problem. Um, I'm going in wanting to redeem myself of the previous season because I had missed competing in the postseason by one spot on cross country. Um, and and so I was like running a lot, trying to do a lot of extra like strength work, but my body was just not the same. Didn't know what it was. Eventually found out it was anemia. So then I was like, oh my God, I just can't win. Like it's injuries and now anemia. Like I know how long anemia takes to like recover from. Like it can take a whole year. Um, and then of course, like the nutritionist like was giving me so much advice about helping me with anemia. And it just every plate of food started to be this whole thought process of I need the iron, but I'm a vegetarian and I'm feeling guilty for being a vegetarian, even though I've been a vegetarian since I was 11 years old. Um, and then the guilt of the calories, right? So it was just easier to like not eat at that point. Um, and then on top of that, um, I was in the middle of the summer. I went out to visit some of the teammates that were still um, there that summer. And there was a person that was associated with the team, not on the team, with the team. And I was sexually assaulted. And so, like, everything about the team setting, cross country, running, it just reminded me of like this event that like I couldn't understand. Like, at first, I was in a lot of denial. I was like, if I run fast, it won't matter. Like everything will go back to normal. Like my life was normal when I ran fast, when I was winning. Like, and you know, for me. I also didn't like come forward about it and try to suppress it because I didn't want to mess with any sort of team dynamic. You know, there were allies on the team, and actually, in my case, I found more support and comfort in my men's team, which is not always the case. Um, but you know, there was a lot of times that I was really feeling unsafe. I would feel unsafe to go to team parties, and this was my team. Like, and so it was very, very hard. And by the time I got back to campus for sophomore year, I wasn't myself. Um, like I said, like obviously drinking is not healthy, but it was a part of um, like our bonding. And I would go and I could not drink. I would stand in a corner. I am usually the one on a table, sober or not, dancing, singing to Fetty Wap. Like that's just who I am. And I couldn't do that. I was in the corner, sometimes having like anxiety attacks. And Xavier was a small school. So like the thought of rumors going around about what happened to me frightened me. Of course, I had like the crush that I was worried about, that like I didn't want them to find out. And of course they eventually found out because like the the athletic circle at Xavier is the Greek life. We don't have Greek life. So we are the people on campus. And it's entangled. Like other athletes live with other athletes, and you know, people talk. And I'm not saying everyone in the school knew, like not everything around, like, but in that kind of trauma, you think that people are talking, you think that this event is everything. And to you it is. To you it's wrong, and it should be wrong. But I think where I was scared of campus, I was scared of people, is I just didn't want anything worse to happen. Like I didn't want, like you're a woman, like stories get conflated. Like you don't want people calling you a slut. You don't want people saying that you get around. Like for me, I had been with one person, and it was a really big deal for me freshman year that you know, I was with one person, but like I didn't want anything else getting around. And it was very hard for me because as a young girl, you don't know what people are going to say, and there's this certain pressure that you have to live up to, and then being an athlete on top of it, it's exhausting. And so eventually, sophomore year, we had this bowling alley that was like a bowling alley and bar. Like no one actually went there to bowl, but we were all there. It was a lot of athletes, a lot of students, and I just remember completely like running out of there at one point, breaking down, and my friends following me and picking me up from the street, like, you have to get help. Because I was just like, I was just so scared to be around anyone. And so I didn't actually seek counseling from the athletic department. One, because I didn't really know, I did know about it. So there was a rumor that the sports psychologist was not helpful. So and my roommate already knew about counseling services that came along with Xavier. Now, a lot of schools, they don't have, they have counseling, but it's like 3 free sessions, right? So we had like a grad program that I guess their practicum was undergrad, like counseling undergrad students. And so I had unlimited counseling with Xavier. That's just not the case for all universities. And there's usually a very, very long wait list because I was considered urgent because of the type of event that I was experiencing and the trauma that I was experiencing. I got right in. It helped a lot, but at this point, like my coach still didn't know. My parents, my family did not know. And for a while I was a little bit better. Wasn't running well. I was still anemic. Started binge eating at that point, because I was running more, but like, yeah, it was a mess, but it it was awesome because like, when you're friends with a prominent team, you start to feel important too. And I think that was a big thing for me is like coming into Xavier, I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to wear Xavier on my chest. I wanted to be important. Because that's what I was used to. And so being friends with and hanging out with a team that already had that importance helped me kind of it made me feel like things would be okay. It made me feel that things would be safe for me, especially because the individuals that we were becoming friends with, became some of our best friends. There was one individual that we lived down in the hall from each other, and like one individual that I really did consider them one of my best friends, and I was able to talk to them about what happened to me in that summer, and just this trust bond formed very, very quickly. And that meant a lot back then because, college is really no different than high school with the friendship drama. And at the time, it just, especially with the way the team dynamic was after what happened to me, I don't know if I could trust a lot of people. And so it was almost refreshing to like be with friends with someone that's like that was not part of the team. Like we had different practice schedules and things like that. Long story short, this person grew romantic feelings for me that I could not return. There was someone that, I still had feelings for. I didn't want that, which in my mind we were friends. And you're at this point, I'm 19. I'm 19 years old. I'm scared of relationships. Like, don't want that. I have enough going on. And that created this void between us and this resentment that every time the feelings would get in the way and I would deny those, like returning those feelings, their behavior started to grow a lot different than the person I knew. Um, it grew manipulative, it grew controlling, it grew scary, um, sometimes violent, and I I felt guilty. Like, like it would be easier if I had just returned the feelings that were presented. Um, but I kept saying no. And but at the same time, I didn't want our friendship to end because I really cared about this person. I finally found someone that like I trusted, felt safe with. And then one day they told me that they were in a drug deal that went bad and then they needed a gun for their protection. And I could tell they were very scared. They were very isolated. They were very alone. And I wanted to help this person. And I told them that I wouldn't tell anyone. I did try to get this person help through the athletic department, like mental health help, and hopefully maybe someone would get through to them other than me that, hey, you don't need a gun. You need help. um, and there was reasons that this person didn't want to go to law enforcement that were totally understandable. And it just didn't seem like the best route. And or going to the school was just not the best route. Like, and this wasn't my decision. Like I had to respect this person's decision on how they wanted to proceed with things, but having a gun was never something that I like supported. And tangled with those feelings for romantic feelings, it turned into me being scared of the individual, or sorry, scared for the individual, and then scared for myself. And because the behavior just started to be different, this person was under the influence a lot, all the time. I started receiving pictures of the gun. Um, every time I tried to do my own thing, like whether it was if I wanted to go on a date or something, like that was just not an option. Like, um, there was a lot. And one day their behavior grew more violent to another person in my friend group. And I was the only one that knew that they had a gun. And so I started to feel responsibility if something ever went south. And so I finally told my roommate, and she was like, you need to tell the school. And I did. And it was a whole thing. um, I eventually had to tell my friend group, and it wasn't taken well, of course. But eventually, when the police investigated it, the campus police, the person confessed to having this gun for my attention. Um, I later find out, like years later, that this person did always have a gun, and they used that as an excuse to stay on their team, which, now looking back, I don't, it was never right, but I have empathy and understanding for that decision. I just don't believe that I had to suffer the violence of it, and all the mental turmoil and heartbreak that came along with that, all the harassment I received from the narrative that got spun from this team, because there was a narrative that got spun that was not true, and it did not make me look good. And it was heartbreaking. It was absolutely devastating. um a little bit after that, I went to this spoken word um, performance that was at my school. It was a group called Speak Like a Girl. And they were some of the bravest women I've ever seen on stage. And they started saying this poem about military sexual assault. And all of a sudden, I burst into tears. And I think I told myself if I could never be like these women and speaking my truth, I just hope that now I know that there's other women that experience this, that there would be women always like them, like helping girls like me. And like I said, it was a small school. Rumors got spread. And then what kept me going were the people that asked me my side of the story. Throughout that time, some people started confiding in me, and some people disclosed their stories. And all of a sudden, I looked specifically at this team that I was associating with before this whole gun event. And I realized there were individuals that were abusing their power. And I started speaking out about how I experienced certain violence on campus. And then more women started talking to me. And then more women started talking to me. And more students started talking to me. And all of a sudden, the campus became freaking smaller. And it was not like, nothing was this perfect image that I had when I came into Xavier. Like, everything was so skewed as the way I think certain coaches, maybe the school, certain individuals were protected in this system of what then I learned to be Title IX. And you know, for me, Title IX did not protect me. When I asked for a protection order was simply a piece of paper. The person who divulged they had a gun was able to stand right next to me. They just could not have communication with me. It was not a restraining order, because Title IX is not the criminal justice system. When I was told that it wasn't up to me, but asked, would I feel safe if this person moved back down the hall from me? I kind of just looked at them and I was like, you just told me it's not up to me, but asked me if I would feel safe if the person who made up that they had a gun moved back down the hall from where I sleep at night. I go, if it's not up to me, then why are you asking? 2 days later, he moved back down the hall from me. And so I started to see the university with clear eyes, and I started growing angry. And like, when you love something, like when you love a school, you want to hold it accountable. And slowly I became like those girls on stage. And I it's not normal. I don't want this to ever be normal, but I was a witness, and witness doesn't mean I watched anything. Witness means that I was a person that survivors then came to when things happened, and then I ended up, by the end of my college career, being in 4 Title IX hearings, one of which one person, and that's not including my own, one person was expelled. So one out of 5.
I'm gonna cut you off right now because I don't want you to be cut off in the middle of a sentence, because I want to hear the rest of this. We have less than a minute though, so I'm going to restart this.
Yeah.
So just click the link that you clicked to get into this one.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Hello. Welcome back. 4 Title IX hearings, only one person was expelled.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and that's even rare. And that might have just because I shouldn't say that, but there were some points where the more I learned about Title IX, the more I learned about the school, I became a common face, right? So I lost my temper in a couple things, and rightfully so. I don't take that back, but I think, I think students have to remember they have the power. no matter how scary it is going up against administration, I think I am the type of person, like I said, I'm the one that's dancing and yelling and singing on tables to Fetty Wap. I'm the same way with the advocacy work. And I think by the end of my college career, there were people that knew that. And even though I was never ready to fight for myself, I was ready to freaking fight for other people. Um, and so that's just kind of what I did. Um, but there was a point my junior year where I just knew, so the perpetrators getting away with it, and they were athletes. And I would walk into practice every day. I'd be afraid of certain locker rooms that I'd walk by. I'd go past the weight room and see another team that hated me because, I mean, it wasn't my fault their teammate did what they did, but I could not go to practice anymore without feeling like freaking scared. And that's not why I started to be a runner. I did not sign up to be a runner to be scared. And to be honest, I look back at it now and I think there was always a part of me that was scared. Like I was scared of what would happen if I didn't join the cross country team, like back in high school, because the coaches there made me feel that way. They made me feel selfish um, for wanting to play field hockey, for wanting to do swimming, for wanting to be a kid. And then I get to college where it's a business and you do represent a university and you're in the real world, right? And then when real things happen, when violence happens and you're still scared, I don't ever think that should be normal. Not for something that you're supposed to love. You're not supposed to be scared of someone you love, and you're not supposed to be scared of the things you love. Um, so I left the team. And what they don't talk about is when you experience violence, you tend to experience other forms of violence because it just becomes normal. It becomes part of your life. Um, it was very easy for me to leave the team thinking I was doing what was best for me. And at the time I was, but then it was easy for me to only know violence. So then it's not very surprising that I was then in an abusive relationship because I was just like, there was so much, like when you confide in someone, especially about the violent things that you've experienced and, you know, things that have impacted your body, like, you know, not just putting your body out there for a sport, but like, but then to have it taken advantage of in other forms, like you don't know yourself anymore. Like that feeling that I used to have as a junior in high school when I had that breakout season and I ran the fastest I ever had, like that is a trust between you and your body that you want for the rest of your life. And that was stripped away from me the second I walked onto campus, basically. Um, and and so it feels really good when you meet someone that thinks you that they're giving you that. But it's also easy for someone to take advantage of that. So for how much I was doing on the advocacy side of things and fighting for others, I didn't know how to take care of myself. Um, I joined student government, and I think that was really, really good for me. I did a lot of campaigns around gender-based violence on campus. I became an educator on healthy and consensual relationships, which again was a little ironic because I was not in a good relationship. But I think doing that work helped me get out of it. But it took years. It took years. It took getting off the campus to be able to understand everything I had been through. Eventually, like my senior year, I was hospitalized. just, it was everything. It was just, not being on the team anymore. It was not feeling loved. It was the trauma that just, I did find out eventually that the gun was real, that everything about what happened was real. And in a way, I was relieved that I wasn't lied to, but I was not, I guess I think, ultimately I loved running. I I loved what my body could do. And I was completely heartbroken that everything else got in the way of that. And my worth was tied to running. And so when I didn't have anything left, because I did not have anything left, at least it felt like that senior year, I hit a breaking point. And I was diagnosed with bipolar depression and anxiety. And it's something I still struggle with, but what I noticed is when you are in healthy relationships, when you're in healthy friendships, that down that you go through when you are bipolar is a lot less heavy, a lot less dark, a lot less dramatic, if you will, when you have the right people, because it gives you the confidence to have agency again of your thought process. Like, even when I'm freaking out, I'm like, I'm okay, I'm safe. For now, it's like it's very important for me to feel safe. And rightfully so, because I spent, solid 5-6 years feeling frightened of the world of living on campus. And that's like, it is the responsibility of that environment, of that campus, of that university, that no student should ever feel that way. Every student should be able to get their degree, why they came there, live there, without the threat or any sort of discrimination. And violence and sexual violence is discrimination. It's the law. Students have rights, and they have power, and you have a voice. And it was a battle learning that. So that's why I do talk about what happened. That's why I do Title IX advocacy work, to make sure it is in the hands of survivors and the people that are most vulnerable to these issues, because I never want any single person walking around campus the way that I felt. And then also leaving campus and having to pick up the pieces to reclaim your life. Because it's horrible. It's not fun. But the things that make it worth it are the fact that no matter what, you have this sparkle that you were kind of like, you're born with, but you also develop going through life. Like, I define sparkle as your happiness, your passion, and self-worth. And no one can take that away. And sometimes it dims from the sexual violence or trauma or whatever it may be. But like, I had to learn that it wasn't just running that made me have a sparkle. It was writing. It was Fetty Wap. It was rosé. It was macaroons. It was traveling. It was being with my friends. Like, it was so many things that made me worth something. And that's what I say every day. It's like, it's not just one thing. And that's like, it's amazing, because no one can ever take that away from you, no matter how hard and dark it gets. So yeah.
Wow. Do you think that college sports, not the agency, not the organization of a college athletic department, but just college, the nature of competing and practicing every day, and the schedule that you get yourself into, do you think that that masks depression symptoms, anxiety, self-worth issues?
I don't So it's kind of a mix of both. I don't know if it's necessarily the structure, um, versus more of the culture. So right, like, we are athletes. We know what it's like to be disciplined. We know what it's like to have a schedule. The culture of the organizations, right, do not prioritize this mental health. When I didn't hand in my travel papers once, I was not going to the meet that weekend because that was the discipline that I had to face and the repercussions I had to face. Luckily, my coach recognized it was more out of character for me and that it was more tied to my mental health. Some coaches would never recognize that. So he did it as, you're being punished like every other team member that didn't hand in their travel letters. But I'm also going to make sure you went to therapy this week because this is not like you. So you have to remember that you have a whole group of athletes, you have this team, but you also have individuals. And it is the responsibility of a coach to know their players, know their team. And so if we're not treating like going to therapy like going to a strength session, like if you are 5 minutes late, if you are 1 minute late to strength training, you're on the stairmaster. And those things teach you important, like if you're late to work, like you're getting fired. Um, so it's the culture of athletic departments and coaches not recognizing that mental health is so tied with the physical performance. When I was feeling good, when I would have a good therapy session, when I would make progress, I was running fast again despite anemia. And even when I wasn't anemic, like when I started to gain self-worth again, when I left the team my junior year, I was running as fast as I was in high school, which is something that no one on the team and the coaches had ever seen. And I turned away from it because it wasn't fulfilling. And I knew at some point when I was going to go back down and I was going to, run terrible again. And it was like, because I knew there was more for me. And that kind of feeling of distress of running bad and then telling myself I am bad was not worth it to me. I don't believe like that is a reason to then just like it is a reason to leave the team, but it's the same time like I think that very much could have been avoided if I had a level understanding that like my worth was not this team, right? I also think, I mean, this is maybe another conversation for another day, but like the NIL is another reason why you stay on the team. And I assure you, if NIL was in place back then, I was on that team. But that's the thing is like, there's different ways we can support athletes, whether it's money, whether it's, you know, helping them join organizations that they wouldn't necessarily be able to join if they were an athlete, because we did miss out on a lot of things as athletes. And I wouldn't have been able to join student government if I was an athlete. And that was the one thing that I think got me out of a lot of, bad things. But yeah, I think it's just you have to treat therapy like practice, and it's really as simple as that. So it's the culture shift in the organization. But you have to remember that I think athletes specifically are much more vulnerable to things like perfectionism, addiction, anxiety, depression. And when the athletic departments and the coaches and the NCAA recognizes it, but when people like that, even if just one person doesn't recognize it, that athlete's going to go through something, whether it's while they're at the school or not. I mean, there's a lot of grief that happens after the athletes are done in the NCAA because most people do not go professional. There's a lot of people that have their tie to their sport, and that's their well-being and their sense of worth and value. And that's not healthy. Don't know the solution, but I know it doesn't take one person, it takes everyone.
It's interesting that you say that, because I feel like I've interviewed athletes from so many different sports, professional, college, even some high school athletes. And there are, even though their experiences are so different, there are still some pillars, some topics that I just feel like I keep talking about. And one of those is athletic identity.
Mm-hmm.
It has essentially become one of the things that is at least alluded to every single week. It's incredible. And I have had a couple episodes where that exact feeling that you're talking about is the reason that they stayed in a toxic team environment. So you are certainly not alone in that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think but we have to ask ourselves, why is it athletic identity that keeps us there? Because we are young and vulnerable, I think, is the main answer. I mean, like I do a lot of work with, healthy and unhealthy relationships. It's really no different. The behaviors essentially is what I'm saying, and the red flags. There's a lot of toxic relationships on college campuses, a lot of like hookup culture and things like that. The term friends with benefits, none of it's healthy, right? But when you have that as part of like the same behaviors and athletic identity, these are still young minds. They don't know how to have relationships. They don't know how to communicate. And we need to ask ourselves, why do we put essentially the pressures of what adults experience, right? Or middle-aged people experience as far as identity and pressures in their jobs on 18-year-olds. It's in the most, like, from a psychological perspective, it's the most impressionable, some of the most impressionable years on the brain. And so yeah, our perspective of having that athletic identity, like, we don't even have the maturity to be like, we have to like leave, and if we do, it's going to cause more issues. Like, I don't think my decision to leave the team was wrong, but it wasn't this liberating feeling. It wasn't. It just wasn't. For how much I tried to convince myself that it was, it absolutely wasn't. It was a lot of grief. It was a lot of pain. Yeah. So.
And how did you fix that relationship with running once you realized that even leaving wasn't a liberating feeling for you? Because I would think that, and someone listening to this podcast would probably say she had these issues that were related to that team environment or the people on that team, and then leaving should have alleviated that for you. And you're saying that that's not at all what happened.
Well, the answer is I didn't fix that relationship with running. It's still something that breaks my heart. It's I was lucky enough that when the whole gun thing went down, I started writing. And one day there was a lot of pages. And after I left Xavier, it took a year, lived in New York for a little bit, moved home, fell in love. And I realized writing was the thing that made me feel the way running used to. And I leaned into it a little bit more. And I got into a master's program at Sarah Lawrence. It was the best decision I ever made. And somehow in that damn program, and everything that I wrote, it was about running. And I noticed that the life of a writer is not very different than the life of a runner. And so for the last, I don't know how many years, for the last, more seriously, the last 3 years, I have been writing a memoir about a lot of the things that we just talked about. And I hope, it has led me back. It has led me back to running. My body doesn't respond to it the same way that it used to. I currently have a labral tear in my other hip right now, and it's just
No.
but I am actually learning more about how the body keeps score. There's a great book.
Have it.
Yeah. And I truly believe that. Um, I think when I write and I carry certain grief and I carry certain feelings, my body talks to me. I mean, your body is an amazing machine. Um, what's cool about it this time around is even if I'm not running a lot, um, or as much as I used to, I'm gaining that trust between my body and I back. And I think even if I never have running back, I definitely want the trust between me and my body because that outweighs everything. I think that's why I stayed on the team as long as I did, is I was searching for that again. I was searching for a way to feel good in this thing that I live in. Um, and writing does that for me. So yeah, even running never comes back, I think that's what I try to push is like there's more. You just have to keep looking for it. And then when you find it, lean into it. I think that's why creativity and unlocking creativity is really important, and especially for athletes and athletes that are trying to find life after athletics. Um, yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned that you didn't know how to ask for help while you were going through the sophomore year and the junior years that you were having in college. How do you hope that telling your story imparts something, some kind of course of action on someone who's dealing with something similar?
Yeah, so I should actually say I forgot to say that by the end of sophomore year, I did tell my coach. Or no, it was actually at the end of cross country season when I was still anemic. I We were going over like my cross country season again, another bad season, and he obviously like the topic of my health and everything came up, but I was going to ask for 5 days off, which if anyone who's a runner knows that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot in athletics, but in running, that's like a whole season. Okay, maybe I'm being a little dramatic, but anyways, I was gonna ask for 5 days off to get an IUD because the nutritionist was like, I don't know if you should be on the pill, like it's causing you weight gain, yada yada yada." And I'm like, "Oh my God, weight gain, like it revolves in my whole brain all the time." Um, and so I was considering an IUD, and my coach was like kind of like a father figure. And so like he didn't do it in any sort of disrespectful way or like any weird way, but like he knew I wasn't in a relationship, or at least like committed one. And so he was like, "Well, do you want to be on birth control?" I don't even think he said it like that. He was like hinting around it. Like I could read his mind on like what he was saying. And like I was like, "Look, I can't feel safe on this campus if I'm not on birth control." And he was like, "What do you mean you can't feel safe?" And when he said it, and when he kind of like, I knew he figured it out, that's when I like broke down and I told him. And so, like, what I would say to people who don't know how to ask for help is like, I know it's very, very, very hard to tell someone what you're going through. One person makes a difference. I think it's hard because why we talk about these issues is, there's been a lot of people that have come forward and said things and they haven't been believed or they haven't received help, and it's awful. I think of all those women we've lost in the last couple of months, and I really do wonder if they came forward and someone didn't say the right thing. And I don't mean to put that on them, but mental health is the responsibility of all of us. And without the support of my coach, and then especially when the gun thing happened, without him being like, "Davey, you cannot run in this meet. Like you are not okay. Like you are taking time off." Like that doesn't happen in a lot of Division 1 programs. Like I think what was great about my coach for him and like my relationship was like he knew that this wasn't normal for me or anyone, for that matter. Like he knew the background that I came from. He knew this was such a culture shock for me. Of course, he was very devastated when I left the team. He never expected that I would give up track. I never expected I was going to give up track. Um, but he wasn't mad at me. Like, and I think there's a lot of people that think if they ask for help or they go to their coach about something, that they're going to get punished. And if they are, shame on that coach, shame on that department. Like, these are real people, these are real lives. Um, and so I think when we are afraid to speak up, we have to remember that we are all we have at the end of the day. And if you want to have agency over yourself and your worth and your value, it is vital that you speak up. Even if it's a cry for help, it changes things.
When you brought that to your coach, how were you received?
He believed me and he did what he was supposed to do. He told the Title IX office, the Title IX office emailed me. I had the option to go forward with it, and I received resources to go forward with it, and I chose not to, but I was able to make that decision. And my training was then accommodated. When he could see I wasn't well and I would think I'm well, right? He would say, no, you're not doing this. And like, just like little things like that, because I think, for me, the main reason I pushed through that injury in high school to the point where I was never going to be able to run again was because I was trying to prove to my team, my coaches, that I was invincible. Like, I was the moment I did decide to join cross country, one of the first incidences I had of an injury was that I wasn't believed. I remember, like, it was my sophomore year, and it was the state championship, and I was hurt, couldn't walk, barely could walk, and I was limping through the warm up. And rather than a coach making the decision to pull me, or from risk of tearing my Achilles, or at least saying, hey, it's okay, I was told to get your goddamn shit together. So I think, from a young age, I learned that it was never about, for me, I thought it wasn't about being believed. It wasn't about me and my pain. And so if I wanted to show anyone that I was worthwhile, it was to work through the pain to any extent. And that mentality shouldn't say carried, it was the mentality that I then brought with me to then developing the stress fractures and pushing through anything, to then the mentality that I thought running was going to be the cure to recovering from sexual assault, to then trying to push out all the threatening things I had with the gun, and then the relationship that I had when I left the team. Like, if I could just push through pain, like I was something. For God's sake, like, if I was sitting with a young girl today, like, no, that is not anything normal. And I think we have to make, like, I know people would say, how are you drawing these similarities and comparisons in your head? This is violence. This is associated with violence against women. It's associated with violence against young people. You're a fool for thinking that these mentalities don't carry into other parts of your life. And if we're going to be like, have these mentalities in sports where pain is weakness leaving the body and all this other bullshit, like, you are setting your athletes up for failure in every single sense. I had a coach that was a sprints coach when I walked onto Xavier's campus. I didn't have him as a coach, but we're, in the cafeteria one day talking, and he said, Davey, I don't coach athletes, I coach people. You are a failure to the athletic program. You're a failure to your athletes if you are not coaching people.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's my story.
Those are all the questions I have to ask you today. Can you pronounce your first and last name, please?
Yes, it's Devi Jagadesan, but I go by Devi Jags.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have 9 minutes. Anything that I missed talking about? Anything that you want me to take out?
It's all there. I told you I'm an open book.
I really appreciate you sitting down and going through this with me. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
sorry for all the time conflicts. It's been crazy.
No, I mean, that's fine.
Okay.
And then normally I will ask, are there any resources that you want me to link down in the show notes?
Yeah, actually, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And rape on campus, and I'll just type it in the chat real
Yeah,
quick.
if you can either DM me the link or yeah, I mean you can share it in the chat right now. That's cool.
Okay, and yeah, that would probably be the two.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll make a note of those. And are those specific to Xavier or are those nationwide?
No, those are nationwide. You might, and then I'm sure you already have like the mental health one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can throw that one in there. But this is specific to violence, and rape on campus is violence on campus, Title IX stuff, and RAIN is just like the national like rape and abuse organization.
Okay. That is all I had to ask you for today. Thank you so much for scheduling this and talking to me. I'm really excited to share your story
Yeah,
because I
good luck
feel
with
like,
everything.
yeah, I feel like this is something that people need to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I really, it's awesome that you have so many athletes that you've talked to. But yeah, this is kind of like the writing and the advocacy, like, well, Title IX as a whole, but like the writing part of it, I really want to also like lean into
Yeah.
the athlete journey. So I'm sure we'll work together again, but this is cool.
Yeah. I mean, not every athlete has these big life events that I talk to. Some are just like, I had trouble, I had performance anxiety. Not everything is clinical, but there are some episodes that I can point to and say this story is applicable outside of sport. And I think yours applies in that category.
Let me tell you, it felt like a damn movie sometimes on that campus. It's ridiculous. But yeah, that's why I'm writing a book.
Yeah. When do we have a release date yet?
No, I don't have a deal set up.
Oh,
I just graduated my MFA. So usually for first
congratulations.
time authors, thank you. For first time authors, you don't typically have a deal ahead of time. Like you have to finish the work unless it includes like research, right? Mine would be strictly memoir that reads like a novel. So like in that mind, it's not ironic, but it's not worth as much. Um, but
Oh.
I had a literary agent. She's the one that actually pushed me to do the MFA. So she read my work before and was like, you have a story here, like you need to go do your MFA. So like I already know the type of agent I'm going to pitch to. I'm very lucky that I'm working at my dream company that if I do solidify a deal, like I will be very okay as far as like connections and that like goal to, I eventually want to adapt it fictionally for film, probably more of a series. So I'm, it's taken me since 2018 to actually lock in those things, but like I'm working on this hopefully last draft of it that will be done by like November, and then I'll start shopping it around and things like that in the new year. But
That's
yeah,
incredible. Your story is
thank you.
incredible. You are incredible. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so much.
for sitting down with me and talking with me about this. This is awesome.
Yeah, and thank you for everything you're doing. It's great.
Thank you. Like I just said, your episode will come out in July. Once that happens, I'll post it on social media. So there will be Instagram and Twitter graphics and videos. And then this entire start to finish podcast, obviously with the selection that you chose to omit, will go up on YouTube. So you can watch the entire interview of ours. And then the podcast will come out on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, Audible, Amazon Music. And
Perfect.
you can listen to it everywhere.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
And if there's anything that changes between now and July, the first week of July, just DM me, update me with anything so I can add it to the script.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you so much.
Bye. Have a great rest
Bye.
of your day, and I'll talk to you in July.
Yes. All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.